what's the basic concept, or maybe I should say, what's the basic building block that makes up an artificial neural network? And yeah, that's right. So you can think about this. You can actually use two different words. Where neural comes from is neurons, right? Namely the basic building block of the brain. But in computer terms, right, and in networking terms, actually we've done communication systems, so we get this, right? We call those neurons nodes. All that means is they're these individual units which connect to other units, okay? Now, just before we go any further, this is a really fascinating idea, okay? Because, I don't know, you guys could go and do the research later on to find out when exactly we discovered that neurons existed, right? And that the brain wasn't just like a squishy thing that was made up of random tissues. But there are these things and they talk to each other with electrical signals. That's really profound, right? I remember I was talking to a friend at uni, this was years ago when I was at uni. And she was a med student, and she was talking about the fact that in anatomy and physiology, okay, the entire human body, basically, is comprehensively understood. Like, the liver, we know everything there is to know about the liver, like, and its function and its structure, okay? The only part of the human body where anatomy and physiology are still kind of like we're still trying to work it out, is the human brain. Which is very interesting, because the human brain is like the one thing that, in terms of science, we have inside knowledge of, right? Inside knowledge. Like, we're in our brain all the time. So we kind of know how it works, and yet it's the most mysterious part of who we are. So I just think that's a little interesting thing. Now, neurons, nodes, what's the key idea? Right? That these are all connected to each other in a partial mesh. Now, when I say partial mesh, that's kind of a bit of a misnomer, because you get the idea that, they're interconnected, but they're not that interconnected. But the fact is, right, every neuron has so many connections with all the other neurons, it's impossible to illustrate, okay? And actually one of the things they're trying to do right now, not the Human Genome Project, which is about mapping human DNA, but the Human Connectome Project, which is about mapping the connections of the human brain, it's nuts. Like, to try and visualize it is crazy. So, this is the basic idea, right? Now, coming back to the question, if that's the basic concept, right, why is it important? Why is it sort of better, in some ways, than all of these guys, okay? What do you think? What did you get out of the video? What makes this approach better? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Now, we said this, right? This was the limitation here, that these pieces, to make a decision, maybe they can make it faster. Like, you don't need to go through millions of versions of a spreadsheet to get one that works and tells you your BMI and then gives you a recommendation. Maybe we go through like 9 or 10 versions, okay? So a disadvantage is that it takes a long time to get a workable system. But time, of course, to a computer is relative, right? So, you know, when the presenter was talking about the millions of times it has to go through a situation, well, our computers, they do exactly that every second, right? Millions and millions of operations. So, even though there's a long time involved, and that's a disadvantage, okay, because we've got the raw computing power of these microprocessors and electronic systems, that's why the disadvantage turns out to be not so much of a disadvantage. And the advantage, of course, is it can learn. Now, this is tricky, right? Can the neural network learn on its own, by itself? And the answer is...
No, you need input.
Ah, right. So the answer is kind of, right? Here's what it means. Here's what we mean. And here's the question I'm trying to pose, right? Can... and this is actually, I mean, I don't mean it, but this is the acronym that's used for artificial neural networks. Can they learn, and the word I'm going to use is autonomously. Okay. Question. Okay, can they learn autonomously? The first answer, yes, right, is that given this set of inputs and a set of expected outputs, right? Like, for instance, if we were a mortgage broker or something like that, right? And we're trying to work out, okay, how much are we willing to lend someone? What you do is you take your history of data and all the people and the inputs about them that you know, like their current income, where they live, their age, and so on and so forth, right? And then you would take your historical decisions, right? This is how much I lent this person. And this is how much I didn't lend this person, right? You take all of that together and say, okay, did it go well? Did it go badly? Whatever. You feed that to your artificial neural network. And it will work out the transfer functions and the weights and all that kind of thing, right? So, yes, given appropriate data, okay, given that set of inputs and the set of expected outputs. Okay, now that part is crucial, right? So it's a little bit like you guys doing an exercise in maths in a textbook, right? And you've got the inputs, namely the question. But in order to actually learn whether you're doing it right, you need the set of expected outputs. You need the answers at the back. Otherwise, you're like, I'm doing these questions, I don't know if I'm doing it right or not. You've got no idea whether you're actually making any progress in improving. Okay? So you need the expected outputs. That's crucial to the whole learning process. Therefore, can it learn autonomously? Well, no. Because where's it going to get those expected outputs from? Right? It doesn't just make them up. I mean, the point is you can't make them up. They have to be known beforehand. Right? So no, because that data still needs to be provided. Still must be provided. Now the important thing is, the reason why we still say the artificial neural network, it really can learn in a genuine way, is that this data you must provide about inputs and expected outputs, you can provide as much as that as you like to all of these, and they won't learn anything, right? They will not change or adapt. Okay, that's not the nature of the system. Whereas the structure of an artificial neural network is to take that expected data, that set, and then to adjust itself in response to that. So it really is yes. It really is yes.